YouTube, what's going on? Well, we're going to look at cars, and I hope everybody's been doing well. Back at it at the channel here. We're going to have more content coming. Of course, there's always things going on, so I want to make as much content as I can, but sometimes I just can't fit it in. But the good news is we have plenty of cars, so I don't have to really get much more cars, but I got plenty to talk about with this batch. This is the recent Greenlight stuff. Highly anticipated the M-Body Chrysler, so we're talking about they're going to do Dodge Diplomat and Plymouth Grand Fury cars. Right now we're going to look at the Diplomat cars. And we have some new equipment too, so we're using a new camera, and hopefully that'll help with looking at all the beautiful details of the cars. Well, let's look at some existing castings that are kind of new decos, and excited to get it. So I thought, I do like the Caprice cars that they've been doing at Greenlight, and so I was like, well, 80 Chevys looks good. I think this is a nice looking car. And we'll take a look at this bad boy. So it's an 80 Caprice. 79 was slightly different. So Greenlight's castings, if you're going to make a Caprice, you're going to want to, let's see if we can get this to tilt up a little bit. There we go. So let's take this bad boy out of here. So I've looked at these cars, put them back in the package so we can see how they look in the package, but this still has the prevalent problem on these cars where it lists to one side. There's clearance on the axle to the top of the chassis casting. They do wheel arches in there, so they're indexed for that fine. They roll, but they do hit the body. You can see how thick it is. So this side being the car's passenger side, it rubs. So unfortunate that it does that. I was thinking the best way to fix it probably would be to drill out the base and then just kind of adjust it on the body there, on the chassis. Let's see if we'll pick up the, maybe make a focus there. Let's see. Let's try the zoom so we can see the construction. So this is their existing tire mold, but it's been cleaned up. So they must have probably redid it. Prior few years it was pretty bad. The tires are getting really bad. They've been starting to do this new batch of tires. You can see how much straighter they are on the wheel and all that. So there's a lot less flashing. The tire material is a little bit stiffer, like it's always been. Although when we looked at the Root Runner trucks, just so you know, these tires are amazing. They're so soft. Same mold. This is their hard vinyl, and this is more like a soft silicone type tire. I really like this tire. Hopefully they'll put this tire on other Greenlight stuff. Oh, 09, what is this? 917 80 Chevy. And again, 18 just because really it's like one of those cars that the guys would drive, the bad guys would drive and chase them around in, these generic American cars. They're all the same. This is really a Hollywood release, but you can see there it's Hollywood, but they're all, this is all the same. The only thing that's different on these packages is your call out right there for what vehicle you're purchasing. But really the difference on this car, they did have amber. It would have been inset split headlights. So these are flush, so it's just kind of which Caprice you get. Seems to be something on the camera there. Let's see if we can wipe it off. There we go. There's a piece of dust or something. Wire wheel covers. So they had a 6-cylinder diesel. Late 70s or early 80s, General Motors was experimenting with diesel V8s. People on the state side, we all know about these. This is limited success. I mean, they put the diesel too in the trucks, a little bit bigger displacement, but V8 diesel. I think it was a 350 diesel. I don't know if they had a 305, but regular gas engines. By 80, I think it was just a 305. It might have had a 6-cylinder V6 and also I think it was just one V8. I think it was just a 305. I don't know if they get 350 in this car anymore. But it did clean up this body, and this body went all the way to 1990. So 91 was the first year for the Aero Caprice, and this was the brick era. So again, a little bit differences with the early or late 70s. Downsized Caprice that came out in 77. It's really the most notable is the doghouse here, so your front quarters and rear had more of a pronounced bevel basically there, where this one's kind of soft. But other than that, pretty much the same car. And this chassis really went back all the way to the 70s ones. You know, they downsized the body, but it was very much carried over. Okay, well, we looked at the Caprice. We've seen it on the police car versions, but it's a nice clean white one, and it is a civilian one. It's not a police car. It looks good with the red. Still missing a two-tone green and gray one, or silver, but we'll get it. We'll find it. It'll come to me. I always get the cars I'm looking for. Alright, next. Well, we're going to go to Indy 500 cars, and this is the 60th running of the Indy 500, 1976. General Motors had the contract that year, and for most of the years at the Indy, they had the contract for the sport vehicles. Well, this one was a really striking color combination. Of course, we have our year-specific background, so this is the 60th 500, 1976, bicentennial year. And here we are, Johnny Rutherford, 1976 winner. So they always do the winner. I always like that. Greenlight exclusive. If you are lucky enough to be in Indiana and go to Indianapolis, you can go to the store, the gift shop, and they carry all of the Indy 500 exclusives there. Of course, a little bit of a markup, but you could say you bought it at the track. This one I got online because it was far cheaper. So here we go. Really cool casting. Very wide. We've talked about this casting in other videos and referenced the 1/64 scale playlist, and you'll be able to see those. But this, again, same construction as the other ones. I really liked. I don't get all the Indy 500 releases, but I get a lot of them, and the graphics are amazing on this one. It's kind of like a matte silver finish. This one comes with the sunroof, so that could have been either a dealer installed. I don't know if it was a factory thing you could do back then. So the 76 GMC, it's kind of like an aftermarket grille. I can't remember if you could have done a grille like that in 76 from the factory. Usually you get that billet grille. Let's see if I can get it to zoom. We'll do the zoom and see if it cuts in. So really cool hood bird on this one, really tiny. It's kind of like an eagle. You do have GMC on, kind of like in white, as you can see. A little bit of a casting error there, as you can see. Let's get the pointer. So maybe the tool is getting a little bit tired. But clear windows, which is good. Again, that's a toss-up a lot of times. But exceptional tampoing. Paint might always be perfect on Greenlight, but the tampoing is usually amazing. And I'm just talking about, we're looking at the tip of an X-Acto blade. And, I mean, look how small. So those are the type of things I like a lot. I mean, that's really cool. Vandura. I think it's a half-ton van, what they're trying to do. These axles were quite spaced out, so I pushed them in No, this was a little bit of a casualty. I'll probably buy another van. I popped out the center cap on that one. Interesting enough, too, chromed wheels, but the lip of the wheel was bare plastic, and that was before I played with them. It came in the package like that. I'm curious. I probably want to buy another one just to see. The other thing, too, is this is kind of like a semi-gloss base that they did. They painted it, and as of course, when I talked in the other one, the way they construct these is the base also becomes the side of the vehicle because of the fender that they kind of do. Because the fenders are sort of pronounced on these vans. This one's decent. But again, it's a separate piece where it's really part of the quarter panel on the real vehicle, so kind of funny with the gap there. But anyway, a lot of overspray. So the black came onto this. I might be able to get that off if the silver is the base, which I'm assuming it is. This black will come off. I just have to wipe it slightly with a little acetone, or probably maybe even something a little bit lighter duty, like a non-toxic version of the nail polish remover, which is kind of a little bit different, so I might try that later. But let's look at it the way it is out of the package before I screw with it. Tinted windows. These taillights are basically the same all the way to the Axe, the box van, before the one that came out in the mid-90s. But this van was very, very long-lived. Greenlight's body is really nice. You can see, talked about the profile of the sheet metal. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be. This is the standard wheelbase van. They did have a version of this vehicle with what they would do is they would extend the middle. Ford and Chrysler vans, they would take the rear axle part in this area and extend the body back in this area, where Chevy did it in the middle. So just a little bit different line of thinking there. It's kind of funny how different manufacturers think of it differently. But a tremendous look, and again, it's going to go good with the next car we're going to look at. So this is, well, this is like one of the first ones, castings of the Fox body. This is a 79. We looked at the 82, I believe, in the last video. But this is the pace car. So this is a 79 car. So Ford had it a little bit for a little bit time. It was really dominated by GM, but Ford and Chrysler would sneak in there occasionally. So Ford, they really wanted to get the new body Mustang out. You know, everybody's kind of done with the Pinto-inspired Mustang 2. And this was a big hit. And this pace car sold very well. And not every pace car, you know, was made a lot of. There's a few of these around to this day. It's one of the, for the Fox body community, this is a very popular car to have. And there's a lot of replicas too, because you can buy the reproduction graphics. So Rick Mears winner, 79. I don't even know what car that is. I mean, I just don't know. I didn't look that part up, but it's cool again. And you get the 79. They did something a little bit different with this one. They took a picture of the actual car, which I think was great. And of course a period photo back there. So let's look at the car. Again, very nicely done. And I brought my pace truck that we looked at almost a year ago on the channel. So these were kind of stable mates for the 79 model year. So but that's kind of cool. But anyway, let's look at the Ford. So T-top car, very highly optioned. It's like a, well, I think this is a Cobra or a GT, something like that. I think they were using Cobra still. But this would have been an 8-cylinder, so they had the 5-liter in 79. And I wrote this down as I couldn't remember. So many cars. Yeah. And they had a 4.2 or 4.9 liter, something like that. So they downsized. They went to a 5-liter V8, then they downsized it in like 80, 81, 82. I think the 5-liter came back. Still carbureted. A 4-barrel carb car. I think in 79 it still was a 4-speed. They might have had the 5-speed, but I think the V8 was a 4-speed still. You can correct me on that. It might have been a 5. But yeah, they put the 5 in. They also had turbo 4-cylinders too. So a lot of different power plants. I think it might have started with an inline 6 and then went to a V6 pretty shortly thereafter. A really cool dual snorkel. That's exactly how I did it. I mean, I think we looked at that on the let's see if this will focus. Let's get this zoomed in then. We'll just use the zoom. There it goes. I think the pace cars are V8 cars. I'm pretty sure. It doesn't look very V8-ish though, does it? There's nothing under that air cleaner. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a 5-liter. So, there it is, the annual Indianapolis 500. You have the horse graphics that are faded. But that was great. So just a neat car. Fox body people love them. They have the TRX wheels that are pretty cool. And again, those hard tires are very nicely molded. Serial number on this one is 404. This one rolls good and the base is straight. So there's a little bit of dust on here, but car rolls nicely. They do drill the holes large for the axles on all Greenlights now, so there's a lot of play. You can see the flashing in there too, so sometimes, and I'll show you in the next few castings, that flashing in there, that sometimes makes the wheels so the car goes crooked when you roll it. So if you have a car that doesn't steer straight, it's typically why. Yeah, that looks good. So a lot of ground effects on the earlier cars, but basically this all the way to 93. I mean, you could really pretty much change your body panels and put, older stuff on the new and vice versa. They all kind of fits together pretty much. But yeah. So Greenlight did the early 80s Fox body. They're going to be doing that now. They did the late model ones like most companies have. And they're one of the few people that are casting pretty much almost every single Mustang generation in 1/64 scale. I think it's 64 all the way up to the new Shelby. You can pretty much get all the Mustangs. I have most of them. I look up my, I fill them in with Auto Worlds. So I do prefer Auto Worlds if I can get it. But Greenlight, their portfolio of cars is just unrivaled. There's so many ones that they do, but it looks great with the truck, and there is no hitch on my truck because I'm not going to change it. But what a setup, huh? Let's see if I can. It's gonna roll, but that'd be a cool setup, wouldn't it? Okay, well, let's look at some more stuff. We got 2 more to go for this episode. And I think, we're going to end with one of my all-time favorite cars. Why it is, I have no idea, because on paper, I mean, this car is just terrible. It's not the fastest car. It doesn't handle the best. But it sure is iconic. I mean, I grew up looking at these cars on TV and seeing them in the streets. And just always liking them. Out of all the domestic rear drive sedans, of all the ones that are my favorites, of course, I like the Monaco cars and all that, Furies, but something about an M platform Chrysler I just love. Basically a small block 8-cylinder car. Just leaf spring in the rear, torsion bar front, subframe. I mean, they were basically based on an economy car, even though this turned into Chrysler's full-size vehicle for the 80s. This was actually the biggest car they did. Most of them were front-wheel drive at this point in the 80s. New York City taxi. I have a lot of the taxis. They made a Torino taxi, and they made a Aero Vic, like a 93, 96 Crown Vic, so I don't have that. But I do have a few of the New York City taxi livery ones, and this one's licensed. So it has the correct door and, all that stuff. I don't think there's a medallion on there, but everything else is pretty good. So we'll look at this one, which is a later model. It's an 84, and this is an 81. Really from, I think, 80. I think it's pretty much 80. It's the second gen Dippies, Diplomats. And, yeah, that slight changes. The LeBaron was before it. Diplomat was revised again in the 70s. It was a 2-door and 4-door car. Looked a little bit slightly different. This is the Gen 2 front end on these cars, and it's lasted all the way to them getting discontinued, unfortunately, in 1989. As the 90s came in, these cars just could not be updated anymore, and really, they were mostly fleet vehicles throughout the 80s. No one really bought these retail. When you looked at cars in its class, everything else was better on paper by far. So you had to actually really want to be a backwards person to buy one. I mean, that's probably why I love it so much, because really the car stretches all the way back into like the early 70s, the way it's performed, or the platform on it. So really a Plymouth Full Air, Dodge Aspen type vehicle. And once those cars were dropped, and the full-size cars, the big full-size rear drive cars like the R-body Chrysler, those all got discontinued and after like 81, 82. And this car is out basically in 78, 79. It got redesigned in 80 and it looked like this, like 81, I think. And so it kind of soldiered on. But it's a funny little car. They had dual exhaust on the police car. This one looks like a single exit, even though it's dual right there. Automatic transmission only, although they did have a very rare option of a 3-speed manual for very early in its life. Talking about the first 3 or 4 years of its existence, not even that. You could get a slant 6, inline 6-cylinder engine, and then as basically the 318. 360 was available for a short amount of time during its lifespan, but again, it went back to the 318. Even on the police spec ones, it was the 318. But there was a hypo 360 4-barrel car. You could get that. Basically, they were all kind of junky because they did have emissions equipment on them. They weren't wide open like the cars in the 70s were from the police departments. But they were very rugged and they're extremely inexpensive. It's probably one of the reasons they were very competitive. They were a little bit lighter and smaller than the Crown Vic and Caprice. That was its competition. You know, this is way before using SUVs or any other type of car. So, not the biggest, but kind of the cheapest. So, I guess for fleet use, it made sense for some jurisdictions. It was very cheap for them to put these cars into use. So, we have both wheel variations. We have the wheel cover one from the A-Team. This is kind of cool. And then we have what they did use, the wide slotted. So this wheel is appropriate for this generation Chrysler car, where it wasn't so appropriate on the older platform, the B-body ones. So it does look at home. Now the only issue with this is kind of like Greenlight's new style, where everything is a closed body, and they have more of like a clamshell type casting for the windows. They're not separate, just one piece. Very clean construction. There's no fingerprints or anything like that, but the car sits extremely low. These cars sat down a little bit, but they weren't this bad. So the tire is tucked up in there under the fender, so not the best, but that can be remedied. You just kind of have to jack them up a little bit, but the body is really good. And let's look at the tampo work. So this is the earlier car. Let's see if we can get it's very hard to see. We'll probably be able to see it better on the yellow car, but Diplomat's there. You got the Pentastar there. Dodge it is separate red taillights, and the bumpers are separate. The car is amazing. They did a really good job. There's so much subject material to do with this car, not only film and TV, but all the vintage police cars. Clear headlights. They did, if you notice, while I have them in front here, they did paint the ones here. I kind of prefer the painted ones versus the clear. There is some flashing there. What we can do later on when we're off camera is just kind of trim that with the blade. That'll look better. Even though this grill stayed pretty much the same, Chrysler did kind of color these slightly different through the years. Even though the shape was pretty much the same the whole time. There were some little small trim differences. Seats changed slightly, the shape of them, and steering wheels and dashboards. But basically the car was the same. Exactly the same. And a very, very high majority of the cars were all 318 V8 cars with the 3-speed automatic. Basically a derivative of the Torque Flight. They might have used Torque Flight in this car. It was just a lighter duty version. I don't think it was like the second generation. Some of you Mopar folks can fill us in at the comments. So look, the Tampa work for the taxi. I think it's amazing. Look at that. So just really cool. Black interior on this. Very dark blue interior on the light blue car. That's like a Robin's Egg car. So very 80s. Something that, again, would definitely appear on the A-Team. The hood is done good. This is actually not tampoed, but that's real relief in there. So they did do that. Windshield wipers are there. No mirrors on the car, but it's a smaller scale and it's a cheaper price point. I understand. So there's our look at the M-Body Chrysler. Very, 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 very excited to have these. I can't wait for all the other ones. Hopefully CHP. We'll have a CHP. We'll have the New York Police Department one is coming out, so I'm going to get a bunch of those. And maybe we'll do another roundup with all the police cars on that the new parking lot. I think that'll look nice too. Well, hope everybody enjoyed it. More to come. We are going to try to do the Hot Wheels and Matchbox stuff soon. But we also have Auto World 2 to look at. So who knows what we'll do next. I'm sure I'll pick something. But getting caught up on my favorite subject, new Greenlight cars. And stay tuned for more. Thank you for all your wonderful comments and subscriptions. More to come. Till next time.